America is the true old world. Ooh, we finna get deep and deeper and deeper. Today we're gonna be diving into a book called America is the True Old World. We're gonna be running through this and going into some sources and some material that I really think is amazing here and allowing us to put a lot of these things together. So one of the first things that I want to mention is that all of the major foods necessary to sustain life come from the Americas. So the Americas, North, South, and Central America are the true old world because of all the major foods needed to sustain life came from the Americas and were later taken to Africa and Asia. Foods like squash, tomatoes, corns, potatoes, beans, wheat, yams, wild rice, which of course was modified to create modern white rice, peanuts. 90% of all your fruits and vegetables come from the Americas. You can see this here on Wikipedia. These are a list of native foods to the Americas itself. Now, also is the oldest pyramids and the most pyramids are actually in America, if you didn't notice, right? The oldest and biggest pyramid are even in the Americas. The Cholula Pyramid is the biggest pyramid in the world. Its dimensions are 400 by 400 meters, and it has a total volume of 4.45 million cubic meters. And that's almost twice the size of the Great Pyramid of Giza. The Cholula Pyramid is also a step pyramid. So we're dealing with a very ancient pyramid because step pyramids were the first pyramids. The pyramids in the Americas are all step pyramids, which were the first pyramids. According to Egyptologists, the step pyramid of Saqqara, the pyramid of Djoser, is the first pyramid that the Egyptians built, and it was dated around 2667 to 2648 BC, which was the third dynasty, which is over 4,700 years old. Egyptologists agree that the step pyramid of Saqqara, the pyramid of Djoser, was the first pyramid, because they agree that it is the archetype of all pyramids itself. You have more pyramids in North America, though, than all of Egypt combined. Now, if we include the pyramids of Central and South America, it's not even a contest anymore as far as who has the most pyramids between the East or the West itself, because the West, the Americas, clearly has more pyramids. This is an image of a pyramid complex in Teotihuacan, which is now near Mexico City in Central America. This is an image of Machu Picchu, Peru, which is in South America. Look at all those pyramids, man. It's just crazy, huh? This is an image of the largest adobe pyramid complex in the world, which is located at Cahuachi, Peru. Again, look at all the pyramids, man. Beautiful. You can see just how old this is. You can tell. And if you didn't notice, the Americas actually has the oldest mummies as well. So the Spirit Cave mummy from Spirit Cave, Fallen, Nevada, which is 9,400 years old. Spirit Cave mummy is the oldest mummy in the world, and it is in the Americas. Additionally, we also have the Chinchorro mummies in South America, in North Chile. These mummies are over 7,000 years old. And as we can see here, the Chinchorro mummies from Wikipedia are mummified remains of individuals from the South American Chinchorro culture found in what is now northern Chile. The earliest mummy has been found in Egypt, dated around 3000 BC, but in Chinchorro, they got it at 5050 BCE. The oldest naturally mummified corpse recovered from the Atacama Desert is dated around 700 or 7020 BCE. So clearly, the oldest mummies in the world do not come from Egypt. They actually come from South America. All right, so we gotta dodge the hijack in relation to what they try to tell you and what is factual and true. So this anthropological evidence demonstrates that the Americas is the true old world. Scholars should be looking in the America for oldest civilizations because the oldest mummies are in the Americas. Their scientific approach on where to look should be completely opposite, based upon all of the evidence of the Americas being the old world itself. Common sense tells me to look in the Americas for the oldest civilizations because the oldest mummies have been found in the Americas. So the Mayan Indians actually civilized the Egyptians. Now, there's an article right here from the Kansas City Journal It's called Prehistoric Man. And they wrote it back in October the 12th in 1866. And it was wrote by Edwin Walters. So this article proves that the oldest civilization was in Yucatan and in Central America, and that Egypt was the first people by immigrants from the Yucatan. This article gives 6 facts to support it, and the article states in the most pertinent part that, quote, after correlating all data that has been made public to the present time, the conclusion is unavoidable that the oldest civilizations was in the Yucatan and Central America. Future discoveries may change this conclusion. It seems that Egypt was first peopled by immigrants from Yucatan. Space will allow only a few facts that clearly indicate the truth of this assertion. The first pyramids of Yucatan are, some of them, much larger than any found in Egypt. That of Cheops not accepted. Second, the pyramids of Egypt bear structural evidences of having been modeled on those of the Yucatan, notably of the one at Coloma, which covers 23 acres. Third, the early Egyptians and the Mayas of the Yucatan had the same system of reckoning time, but the Mayas developed a system that was far superior, and which antedated that of Egypt. Fourth, the Mayas manufactured a cement that was of the same material as that of ancient Egypt. Fifth, the architecture of Yucatan is of the same general type as that of ancient Egypt, but it is finer and seems to have been a model that the Egyptians attempted to imitate. Sixth, the art of both countries, as displayed in their ceramics and architecture, is of the same type of school, that of the Yucatan being much more highly developed. According to one of these traditions, a portion of the Mayas, about 40,000 years ago, rebelled against the ruling king and finally withdrew to the north. This branch seems to have passed along the coast of the Gulf of Mexico and to have reached Louisiana and the lower Mississippi Valley between 30,000 and 35,000 years ago. It continues by saying, and a few years ago, some caissons were sunk for bridge piers on Bayou La Fourche, Louisiana, at a depth of about 62 feet. Some graves were uncovered. You hear that? At 62 feet, man, below. They had been made on the sandy beach of the Gulf of Mexico and had been covered with oyster shells. This present coast is about 110 miles from that point. The average thickness of the freshwater mud, so far as surveyed, is not less than 40 feet from this point to the Gulf Coast. Taking the average amount of solid matter mud that has annually passed down the Mississippi River to form these delta and Gulf plain, and we have a measuring unit. The United States government observations made daily since 1872, if I remember correctly, gives the annual amount at 57,872,000 cubic yards per year. By this unit, these graves are at least 29,000 years old. From the lower Mississippi, these people spread over much of the central portions of the North American continent, especially throughout the valleys of the Ohio and Mississippi and the Lake region. They seem to have been the original mound builders, end quote. Now, what you seeing in this picture here? Seeing you in a Marucan, Look at that. Look at that hair. Look at them beady hair, that curly hair, That swarthy skin. But what else we seeing? We seeing some corn. Looking like some corn, Yes. It depicts maize, corn from Punt, which is only indigenous to the Americas. And y'all seeing now, the Americas is the oldest landmass, bruh. There's no cap to that. So, further evidence will support, or to support the said article, can be found in the book Queen Mu and the Egyptian Sphinx by Augustus Le Plec-Guillaume. The Mayas were the ancestors of the Egyptians. Quote, like the Mayas, the Egyptians regarded the West as the region of darkness, the place where the souls of the dead returned to the bosom of their ancestors in the realm of Amenti. There, King Osiris sat on a throne in the midst of the waters. There, also, It was that Thoth, Thoth, huh? Who we talking about? Thoth, huh? Performed his office of scribe, was then the worship of Senocephalus, his totem, brought to Egypt from the lands of the west. Pythagoras borrowed his knowledge of numbers and their meanings from the Egyptians. These received their science from the Mayas, those civilized strangers, their ancestors, who in remote ages, coming from the east and from the west, had settled and brought civilization to the banks of the Nile. Such being the case, it is but natural that we should find the same doctrine regarding the cosmogony and the meaning of numbers in Mayak, their mother country, in the lands of the west. The Maya sages, doubtless, had reached similar conclusions, since they called their country Mayak, that is, the land that first emerged from the bosom of the deep, the country of the Shut. And the Egyptians, according to Herodotus, boasted that their ancestors in the land of the west were oldest men on earth. Here again we can see some more depictions of some maize, some corn, right? This is an engraving of the temple of Hatshepsut, a 18th century dynasty Egyptian pharaoh, which depicts pineapples from Punt, which is only indigenous to the Americas. So, evidence to support the above statement coming from Queen Mu book, Mayak, that is the land that first emerged from the bosom of the deep, can be found in Jean-Louis Agassiz's book, Geological Sketches, and this was in 1866. So, according to Jean-Louis Rodolphe Agassiz, a renowned biologist and geologist from Harvard, America is the old world. And he states, quote, "Firstborn among the continents, America has been falsely denominated the New World. Hers was the first dry land lifted out of the waters. Hers was the first shore washed by the ocean that enveloped all the earth besides. And while Europe was represented only by islands rising here and there above the sea, America, being Atlantis, already stretched in an unbroken line of land from Nova Scotia to the far west." End quote. So evidence to support the fact that the Mayans are the ancestors of the Egyptians can be found in the tomb of the Maya temple of the Maya in Egypt, because there is a Maya on the wall that is dressed in Kemetan or Egyptian garb. And I know y'all know about Brian Forrester and Stephen Mehler. Here, I'm going to show y'all the video right here. Check it out.
Of 1997 would be, he said, he would show us evidence of a Mayan temple in Egypt.
Mayan as in culture.
Exactly. And I said, this I never heard of. No, it's not in any text. No one has ever mentioned it. Okay. We came here. This was arranged differently then. A lot of this is new construction. It was not this way in 1997. First of all, I looked on the wall. Behind you see that is Maya, but it looks typically commissioned.
Right.
And I'm looking around, typically commissioned. All it looks. So Hakim would use the expression, well, you know, Stephen, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. He's living in Kemet. He's going to pass in Kemet, so he's portraying himself as a Commission. So I said, well, Papa, this is great, but I can't go with this in front of an academic audience. They'll laugh me off the stage. There's nothing here to identify with the culture we're talking about. But then there was a keeper like this gentleman here, was here, didn't speak any English, but saw that I was perplexed. He said, come here. This then was boarded up with just a wooden door. And there was latches there. He threw away the wooden slabs, opened the door, and he said, look up. And that is the key. Took a picture in 1997. Sent it to Mayan daykeeper Hanbat's men. He said he recognizes this as the language of the Itza people, whereas Chichen Itza, he said, is an ancient language. But a lot of people are not sure about Hanbat's men. So we went one step further. In 2010, I got to meet Don Alejandro Sul Ojaj. He is the wisdom keeper, the head of the Quiche Maya of all of Guatemala. I showed him this picture, and his eyes went as big as saucers. And he said to me, that is the language of my ancestors. That is a calendar. That is telling the date of when Maya was here. And Howie can't read it. He can't even still read it, but he knows that the circles and squares and different colors, arrangements, and the spokes in the wheel are indications of a date. So, this has never been discussed by any Egyptologist. They cannot put this in a Commission context. There is nothing, or maybe there is others that Yosef has seen, but there's nothing like this in the rest of Egypt. So, Mayan elders recognize this as part of their culture. So now the key is, Maya, the word is a title. Men and women had the title. Very interesting, because we've talked about the difference between Egyptian Arabic and other Arabic. In Egypt, one of the key words for water is Maya. It is not pronounced the same way in any other Arabic country. If you went to Saudi Arabia, they would say Ma or Meh. Only in Egypt is it pronounced Maya. And it means water. So I asked Hakim, could the title Maya actually have meant he who came from across the water, or ones who came from across the water? He said yes. So here is what we call diffusionism archaeology, diffusionism anthropology, saying that there had to be cultural contact between these individuals thousands of miles across the sea. And this is the evidence that Hakim told us that there was a Mayan living in Egypt 3,300 years ago. Let somebody else define that for me and tell me that that is Commission or Egyptian or dynastic or anything else.
So, as you can see, this video evidence proves contact between the two cultures. But I'm going to take it a step further by giving you Dr. Ivan van Sertima's book, They Came Before Columbus. Now, in Dr. Sertima's said book, he demonstrates contact between Egypt and the Americas with evidence of all the agricultural trade for items like tobacco, cocaine, maize, corn, pineapples, and etc. And of course, all of which I just spoke about are only native to the Americas. So there was definitely contact between South American Indians and the Egyptians. And I strongly believe that Punt was in South America. I strongly believe this because the Egyptians do come from Punt, Ethiopian, and both nations, right? Maya and Egyptians did trading, commerce, and business together, which is evident when you look at the Pharaoh Hatshepsut's temple engraving, which depicts a maize or corn, cob, and a pineapple. Okay, both of which are indigenous to the Americas. But you also got to remember the hijack in relation to Ethiopia or Ethiopian. You know, a lot of the times, at least nowadays, our understanding of Ethiopian or Ethiopian is like a country. But back then, it meant one who was of dark skin, burnt skin, right? Just a dark person. And that could have been in any region, in any area. You know, the maize and the pineapple is a strong evidence that Punt was in South America, because the Egyptians showed on their temple engraving what they had brought from Punt, which had to be in the Americas, especially South America, because the maize and pineapples are only indigenous to the Americas. Punt is akin to Ethiopia, because Punt, like Ethiopia, is considered to be the birthplace of Egypt, both of which were in the Americas. So because Punt is like Ethiopia, is considered to be the birthplace of Egypt, and both of which were in the Americas, because Atlanta was in the Americas, and it was, of course, mostly South America. Now, Dr. Gunnar Thompson argues that Punt was a Phoenician trading base near the equator on the American mainland. Do you hear me? Dr. Gunnar Thompson agrees or argues that Punt was a Phoenician trading base near the equator on the American mainland. The New World was a major source of copper, which is found mainly in the Andes in Peru, and Isle Royale in Lake Superior. Paul Gales argues that the land of Punt was the Puno region of Peru, on the shores of Lake Titicaca, where there are many old gold, antimony mines, metals that were brought back from Punt. The reed boats used on Lake Titicaca are almost identical to those used in ancient Egypt. Atlantis discovered. Atlantis was in the Americas. Atlantis was in the Americas because of places, names like Atlantic, Atlantis Ocean, Atlanta, Georgia, Atlan, okay? Atlan, Georgia, Atlan, and the Adzlan State Park in Wisconsin, Sons of Wakanda. Also, Atlanta was in Mexico, according to the book India Once Ruled the Americas by Gene Matlock. Quote, Mexico has a lot of place names that contain Tlan, Tlan, Tlan. But why are the initial A and final T is missing in that popular Mexican place name? Hard evidence suggests that Sanskrit is the father of most world-class languages. If we use Sanskrit to explain the true meaning of Atlantis, we learn that the initial A means not, no longer. The final T, or tis, derives from the Sanskrit desa, des, or tes, meaning nation. Atlantis, means no longer the Tlan or Dalan nation. When Atlantis sank under the ocean named after it, it certainly ceased to exist. However, the westernmost extreme of Atlantis, which is Mexico, is still above water. It continues to be Dolan or Tlan. So now that we have established the meaning of the initial A and final tis in Atlantis, we must search for the meaning of Tlan or Dolan. In Sanskrit, Talan equals surface, a place on the surface. The N refers to the people living on this surface. A, not or no longer. Talan, on the surface. Tes or des, nation, land. Tlan or Tolan, Mexico, is the part that remained above water. Even in Nahuatl, Tlan, Dolan equals surface, a place. In Greek, tala means to bear, support, hold up. There is still another Sanskrit meaning, God, Shiva. Talan equals the people of God Shiva. Sanskrit Atala equals not to bear, not to hold up, bottomless, underneath, underworld, hell. Atlan can mean any or all of the following: people of hell, people of the underworld. Patala and Atala were both Sanskrit names for America, end quote. We all know about the Atlantis that is in the eye of the Sahara in Africa, but few of us know about the Atlantis that was in the Americas. The Atlantis that was in the Americas is the oldest because of the Maya connection. Atlantis was, of course, the mother civilization of Egypt. So I hope this information settles all debates about who civilized who and who is the oldest. The oldest throne is in the Americas. What's up, everybody? It's your boy Tona V. Thanks for being here with me. You know, we really stoked to finally go into again this part 2 of America is the True Old World. Again, this is part 2. In this part, we're going to be talking about India Superior was in the Americas. Mu discovered the America is Mu, the motherland. You dig? So civilization came from India Superior, which was in North America. All life and civilization came from the uppermost region of India Superior, which is the Arctic North Pole, aka Mount Meru. Mary, goddess Danu, or Anu, aka Mu, which is the mythical Garden of Eden and Hyperborea. It is in the mythical that we have the truth, which is a Greek proverb. Genesis of the King James Bible, chapter 2, verse 10 through 14, lists 4 rivers in association with the Garden of Eden: Pishon, Gihon, Dekel, the Tigris, and Farat, the Euphrates. It also refers to the land of Cush. Ooh, we're talking about Cush now, huh? Translated and interpreted as Ethiopia. We already know that Ethiopia is a Greek word which means burnt face or sun-darkened people, aka blacks, or the so-called black man, or Negro. Quote, with regard to the Ethiopians, Strabo indicates that they looked similar to Indians, remarking those who are in Asia, South India, and those who are in Africa do not differ from each other, unquote. And this was from Turner Sharon in 1834, coming from the book The Sacred History of the World as Displayed in the Creation of Subsequent Events to the Deluge, attempted to be philosophically considered in a series of Letter to a Son, Volume 2. So yes, again, civilization could have started from the north in accordance with many myths. The Bible lists 4 rivers in association with the Garden of Eden, and you can see 4 rivers in the black magnetic cube, the Kaaba, in the center of the lake where the rivers emanate. From that represents the tree of life, the Garden of Eden. Now, James Churchward, in his book, The Lost Continent of Mu, referred to Mu as the motherland. And to be honest with you, Mu is a creation of James Churchward as a decoy for what his friend William Niven had found in the Valley of Mexico. Churchward based his book, The Lost Continent of Mu, on the archaeological finds of his friend William Niven. William Niven found over 2,600 Egyptian-style artifacts in the Valley of Mexico that rewrite history because his find was dated to be over 50,000 years old. Do you hear me? Let me repeat that for you. William Niven found over 2,600 Egyptian-style artifacts in the Valley of Mexico that rewrite history because his find was dated to be over 50,000 years old. So of course his work was dismissed as a hoax because his work didn't fit in with the current narrative of the Americas being the new world that was discovered by Cristoforo Colombo in 1492. The Nakal, or should I say Naccal, or Naga tablets that Niven found gave you the sacred symbols of Mu. Mount Meru is considered to be the center of all the physical, metaphysical, and spiritual universes. Mount Meru is the black magnetic mountain, or the black cube, or rather Kaaba, that is at the center of the lake, surrounded by 4 land masses. on the 1595 Mercator map of the Arctic North Pole. The Arctic North Pole, Mount Meru, resembles the swastika. The swastika is a physical representation of Mu, the mother, which, is a sacred symbol. Now here in this figure, it shows you the swastika. And here shows you the mother, Mu, Maru, Mary, or Mary, in the center of the four corners, or four cardinal points of the zodiac, which emanates from the North Star, or Pole Star, Polaris, which is the highest star and the first star that created all the other stars. The zodiac is called the Wheel of Fire because all knowledge comes from the zodiac, astrology. As you'll see here, is the zodiac wheel, the swastika that revolves around the pole star, aka the Great Mother Mu. The pole star is one of the brightest stars in the sky. It is so bright that it looks like the shape of a Christian cross from the sky. It is so bright that it looks like the shape of the Christian cross from the sky. The Christian cross and the swastika are related because they both come from the great source of life, Mount Meru, which is the pole star, and they both symbolize the four corners, four cardinal points of the zodiac. The number 4 also symbolizes the four great primary forces, the four elements, which are the executors of the Creator's commands. According to legend, quote, the Creator's command to the sacred four was, "Let the waters bring forth life." The sacred four acted, and a cosmic egg was formed out of the mud, the bed of waters, from which the first of nature's lives on earth came forth as commanded, unquote. This Niven tablet alone is sufficient to show that these old Mexicans, Olmecs, obtained their cosmogony knowledge from the sacred inspired writings of Mu, the foundation head, aka the Great Mother Mu, Maru, Mary, which is the pole star that created the zodiac and all life and knowledge on this planet. Water, life, is renewed, anew, at the Arctic North Pole, aka Mount Meru. The Arctic North Pole used to be a warm and lush area as recently as the 1600s, so it is very possible that life could have come from the north, aka via Northmen, Olmec Moors, who became the Maya Naga. In a literal sense, physical sense, the Olmec Moors, being the first human beings, are from Mount Meru because they are merry men, aka renowned men of Mother Mary. Every man and woman are born from Mount Meru because everyone was born through the womb of a woman. As above, so below. Yes, the same way Mount Meru, the pole star, the North Star, created the heavens, the stars, and the earth. Woman, being a reflection of the Great Mother, created man and woman. The human form is also a representation of Mount Meru because the human body has 4 major limbs and a navel, center of Ki. Each limb of the human body represents the 4 cardinal points of the zodiac, and the navel is the pole star, North Star, which is the center or the source of electromagnetic energy. As above, so below. Polaris is short for pole star, North Star, and it is the highest star that is at the center of our galaxy. Polaris is also religious figures like Lord Brahma, Abraham of the Bible. Doruva, Christ and his 12 disciples, or the Zodiac. Meru and the tree of life in the Garden of Eden are one and the same. Polaris is the central axis where the universal life force, electromagnetic energy, runs through and branches out to feed everyone and everything. Mount Meru literally creates the vortex, spiral, spirit of life that creates and sustains life itself. The Chinese call Polaris the great and honorable Lord of the heavens, who gives spiritual powers and a sense of purpose, direction, connectedness, and the ability to achieve one's objectives and to remember and find one's way back home to source. Polaris is the first blue ray, and its vibrations are felt by those on the higher path to spirituality. It is also closely linked to Aquarius and the search for truth. All of the avatars and Manu come from Polaris, seeding the root races on the Earth's plane. Or should I say, Earth's planes. A root race is seeded roughly every 24,000 years, and one of the oldest root races is the Hyperborean giants, which were the progenitors to the Olmec giants, the black race from Mu. The Olmecs were Mu-ers, Moors, because they came from Mu, Maru, Mari, Mary. Mu is code for Moors, Mu-ers. Of course, now what you'll see here is an image of an Olmec. What they say is Moor head. The headdress on the Olmec, Old Mexican, resembles and shows you the tassels on the back of the figure. Now, this is where we're going to get into America is India superior in the Orient or the East, because the Orient essentially just means the East, right? So he says, here is a statue of the goddess Yamuna standing on a turtle shell, Turtle Island, aka the Americas, which is more evidence that India Superior / Asia Major was in North America, aka the Orient or the true East, because the goddess Yamuna is a Hindu or Indian goddess. So he says, why is the statue of the goddess Yamuna good evidence? Well, because the Americas was known as Turtle Island. This is a known fact because the American landmass looks like a giant turtle from the sky. The goddess Yamuna was the wife of Krishna, the Indian Christ. Goddess Yamuna symbolizes the Mother Mary principle of love. Also, here's a map, 1625, of the Americas being described as India and the Orient from the Stanford University Library. Also, here's another map of the Americas being described as India and the Orient from the Stanford University Library by Lucchini Antonio Francesco. And this is dated 1605. And regardless of the timeline and the chronology, sometimes we got to dodge the hijack on the chronology, Also, here's a map, 1625, of the Americas being described as India and the Orient from the Stanford University Library. Also, here is a Macrobius 1440 map of India being located in Mexico. The geographer Macrobius made a map for Roman or Romani or Roman merchants that shows the location of the principal western seacoasts of Florida and Mexico. This map is very significant because it is more evidence that India is the oldest civilization, because civilization came from the Yucatan Principle. Cristoforo Colombo and the Spanish conquerors called them Indians because the American landmass was once known as India. Additionally, in the medieval times, the civilized world was once known as the Three Indies or the Three Ethiopias, which included the Americas, Eurasia, and Africa. European scholars associate Egypt with being in the Orient. The term Orient means east. Is the east really the west? Well, let's look at some of the evidence to decide. The Dragon King, Priest King, Messiah, Black Panther, Quetzalcoatl was known as the morning star in the east, which is Venus or love. Jesus was also known as the bright and morning star, which is Venus. Quetzalcoatl was, of course, one of the chief gods of Mesoamerica, so this means that America is the true east. More evidence that the west is the true east is the Moor king in the Orient, or east. Here you will see a painting from 1703 by two European artists, Christophe Weigel in Elder and Caspar Lueken, that was in the Orient, east, which is the Americas. The painting is called Moorish King of the Orient. Notice the feathered crown the Moor is wearing in the photo, which indicates that the painting is that of an American Indian chief that was seen over here in the Americas in the 1700s. More evidence that the West is the true East is this ancient world map from 1548, which shows you the Orient, East, because this ancient map indicates that India Superior was in North America, and so was La China. Yes, India in China was in North America. Look at how big La Florida used to be, matter of fact. The America is the true east because the Euphrates River is in North America. The Americas is indeed the old world because the Euphrates River is in America, according to this scholarly article by renowned historian and author Angela Van Halen. Quote, local sites, foreign sites, a sailor sketchbook of human and animal curiosities in early modern Amsterdam, unquote. You will see where they had caught a tapir, a now extinct species, in the river Euphrates in America. The article goes on by saying that this is probably an error because the river Euphrates is far from America. Well, this is no error, because we know that the America is the land of the Bible in the Old World, as you will discover later, as we go through this whole thing here. Atlantis was a colony of India Superior. This makes sense because one of the meanings of Atlantis is the people of Lord Shiva, which was a deity associated with a three-pronged pitchfork. Additionally, Atlanteans are associated with underworld people that carried a three-pronged pitchfork, which symbolizes the Trinity. Shiva is, of course, an ancient Hindu or Indian god that has a three-pronged pitchfork. Ethiopia and India were often confused, one and the same, according to the book The Medieval Empire of the Israelites by Robert Grisham. This makes sense when you factor into account that the swastika, symbol of Brahma or Abraham, which means black spirit, was the chief religious symbol in ancient Ethiopia and in India. The swastika is just a reflection of Mount Meru. Of course, this is an old map showing you that Mexico, Central America, and South America were once known as India. This map is very significant because of the Eye of Atlantis, according to Gene Matlock, and was in Mexico. Mexico is actually ancient India, according to the evidence, so yes, Atlantis and all civilizations are a colony of India, because civilization came from the Yucatan Peninsula via Maya Indians, India, as I have already previously demonstrated. In the Egyptian Sphinx by Augustus Le Plongeon, and wanted to bring you to this section real quick, still in the preface. And he says down here, in the appendix are presented for the first time in modern ages the cosmogonic notions of the ancient Mayas rediscovered by myself. They will be found identical with those of their civilized nations of antiquity. In them are embodied many of the secret doctrines communicated in their initiations to the adepts in India, Chaldea, Egypt, and Samothracia. The origin of worship of the cross, of that of the tree, and of the serpent, introduced in India by the Nagas, who raised such a magnificent temple in Cambodia in the city of Angkor Thom to their god, the seven-headed serpent, the Aak Chapat of the Mayas, and afterward carried its worship to Akkad and to Babylon. We're going to jump over to another book, which is The Lost Continent of Mu, The Motherland of Man by Colonel James Churchward. We're going to be jumping over to page 158. So just so you know, Prince Maya took the serpent wisdom into India over 20,000 years ago, according to the Ramayana and the book The Lost Continent of Mu by James Churchward. One very prominent figure in the Naga or Maya Empire in India was Prince Maya. The time of Prince Maya is doubtful, although I have come across many records about him. Not a single one even estimates the date when he lived, but according to traditions, and these traditions are as plentiful as leaves on a tree, Prince Maya lived 15,000 to 20,000 years ago. In Ramayana, we find this reference to him. Quote, in olden times there was a prince of the Nagas whose name was Maya. Prince Maya was the author of the Surya Siddhanta, the most ancient treatise on astronomy in India. Its age has been variously estimated at from 10,000 to 22,000 years. At the time of Prince Maya, the Nagas were an empire. When the handle and sheath of this knife were made, the Nagas were a colony antedating the empire. That they were only a colony is clearly shown by the suns without rays on the horizon. This proves the extreme antiquity of the handle and sheath. So right here it says, in America is the true old world, that the Maya Naga took the serpent wisdom into Burma, India, over 30,000 years ago, according to the book The Garden of the Elder Gods by M. Don Schorr. Quote, an overview of such regional centers will commence within Asia, where one of the early academics was evidently located in ancient Burma, modern-day Myanmar. According to the Indian historian Valmiki, Burma was the first settlement in Asia, with some records supposedly dating its cultural starting around 33,000 BC. Records from other diverse cultures state that extensive instruction was dispensed throughout Burma prior to its dispersal into other lands. Such graduates eventually migrated eastward into China and southeastward into Thailand and Cambodia, as well as westward into an uninhabited part of northwestern India. In those areas, human graduates and a few helpers that accompanied them taught human natives they encountered. Those regional teachers became known as the Nagas. Certain ancient tablets found in Burma have been directly linked with Naga records found within India. Writings by Valmiki expressly stated the Maya, starting from the land of the birth in the east, went first to Burma and there taught the natives, who became known as the people of the Nagas. The original indigenous culture of India is thought to be that of the Danavas, the Nagas, who were later called the Nagals, and still later became known as the Maya, reportedly imparted that culture. However, Colonel Churchward claimed that the original or earliest people were actually the Maya, perhaps a reference to the ancient ones or the pure-blooded human-like lunar Petris that comprise the group known as the Helpers. Valmiki further claimed that the Naga came to be called the Maya in certain later settlements, accounting for the overall confusion of the chronological order of introduction between the Naga, Danavas, Nakals, and Maya. Some records resolve this linguistic dispute by referring to the earliest civilizers as the Nagamaya. There are further indications, although inconclusive, that the Nagamaya may have also been associated with the Mayans of Mesoamerica. Amaruca. Ancient records indicate that the original Nagamaya were associated with the serpent people, the esoteric non-human race of wondrous beings that reportedly possessed immense cosmic wisdom. The serpent's symbol was one of the ancient icons, specifically referring to the ancient ones. Hence, the Naga emblem became the serpent or cobra symbol of ancient India, one reversed as signifying both great wisdom and immense knowledge. One of the prominent Naga Empire leaders was the original Prince Maya, with a latter namesake or counterpart also existing during much later times. No written records establish the time frame for the original prince, but oral traditions place him as living sometime between 18,000 and 13,000 BC. The Ramayana merely refers to the original Prince Maya as living. That original prince is credited as the true source of most of the esoteric knowledge in India, passed down over the ages, which was later contained in the Surya Siddhartha. End quote. According to the book Queen Mu in the Egyptian Sphinx by Augustus Le Plate-Guillaume, Mayak and not India is the true mother of nations. The Mayas called their land Mayak. The Mayas were the Mayan Indians. So Mayak has to be referring to the Americas, specifically Mesoamerica, Amaruca, because the Mayans come from the said region. Quote, the question is often asked, of what practical utility can the knowledge that America was possibly the cradle of man's civilization be to mankind? To some, of but little use truly, but many there are who would be glad to know the origin of man's primitive traditions recorded in sacred books in the shape of myths or legends, and what were the incidents that served as basis on which has been raised the fabric of the various religions that have existed and do exist among men, have been and still are the cause of so many wars, dissensions, and persecutions. This knowledge would also serve to disclose the source whence emanated all those superstitions that have intellectual and moral progress, and to free his mind from all such trammels, and make known the fact that Mayak, not India, is the true mother of all nations. Perhaps also will be felt the necessity of recovering the libraries of the Maya sagas, hidden about the beginning of the Christian era, to save them from destruction of the hands of the devastating hordes that invaded their counter in those times, and to learn from their contents the wisdom of those ancient philosophers, of which that preserved in the books of the Brahmins is but the reflection. Of which that preserved in the books of the Brahmins is but the reflection. You understand what's being said here? That wisdom was no doubt brought to India. That wisdom was no doubt, he says, brought to India, and from there carried to Babylon and Egypt in very remote ages by those Maya adepts, Nakal, the exalted. Nakal means exalted. Nakal is the Mayan adepts who carried their intelligence and wisdom to Babylon and Egypt. who, starting from the land of their birth as missionaries of religion and civilization, went to Burma, where they became known as Nagas. My Nagas, you heard me? Established themselves in the Deccan, whence they carried all over the earth. End quote. Respected mineralogist and archaeologist William Niven found over 2,600 Egyptian-style artifacts in the Valley of Mexico, dating over 50,000 years ago, according to the book The Mysteries of the Mexican Pyramids by Peter Tompkins. Quote, actually, Niven had been exploring in Mexico since 1889, while digging among the ancient ruined cities in the unknown and uninhabited portion of the state of Guerrero, southwest of Mexico City in the Acapulco area. He began to receive periodic visits from the local Indians who came with terracotta figurines and other objects for sale. Though the Indians pretended to have found these objects at the pyramids of the Sun and Moon at San Juan Teotihuacan, Niven realized that the source of the artifacts must be nearer. With a bribe of 5 pesos, $2.50 at the time, he managed to discover the actual spot between Texcoco and Pantla hamlets just north of Mexico City. He came across hundreds, if not thousands, of pits dug into the sand, clay, and tapete, used for material by the builders of Mexico City for more than 300 years. Exploring these pits, which Niven says cover an area of about 20 by 20 miles in the northwest corner of the Valley of Mexico, he came across vast layers of what appeared to be very ancient ruins, whole prehistoric cities lying as deep as 30 feet below the plain. 30 feet. 30 feet below the plain. What caused all... how long ago was this really? Was that just natural accumulation over time? Are we talking about a massive amount of time period here for all that to accumulate? Okay, so it says, which appeared to have been overwhelmed by a series of cataclysmic tidal waves. Okay, that's what he says. Perhaps at several thousand-year intervals. Now we get somewhere. Which, as Niven described them, had left telltale strata of boulders, sand, and pebbles by their depth beneath the surface. Niven estimated the oldest remains might go as far back as 50,000 years. End quote. James Churchward, an inventor and occult writer, was a friend of William Niven. Churchward based his book on the finds of William Niven. Churchward contends in his Lost Continent of Mu book that the oldest record of man are found in North America. Quote, the Oriental Nacal tablets, which formed the foundation of the first edition of this book, were a wonderful history of past men. Niven's Mexico stone tablets are equally wonderful and instructive, if not more so. If not what? More so. They confirm my contention that the oldest records of man are not to be found in Egypt or the valley of the Euphrates, but right here in North America and in the Orient, where Mu planted her first colonies. Unquote. The work of William Niven was dismissed by mainstream academia because his find does not fit in with the current narrative of the Americas being the New World, since his find is dated over 50,000 years ago. Hello? Yeah, of course. How can Niven's find be a hoax? Would a respected mineralogist and archaeologist really create 2,600 plus fake tablets and other discoveries? To what end? It seems he would have more to lose than to actually gain. In any event, the controversy rages on to this day, and I'm curious to know where the ruins he discovered are and what explanations archaeology offers to explain them. Because how can 2,600 artifacts be a hoax? I think the Niven tablets are worth re-examining. Many people dismiss them only because they were featured in the poorly written and racist Lost Continent of Mu book. But that's not Niven's fault. In his book Hindu America, Indian author Chaman La states, quote, at present, we are studying the native tongues and find that at least as far as the Nahuatl, the Zapoteca, and Maya languages are concerned, They are of Indo-European Sanskrit origin. Sanskrit is of course an Indian language. The Moors, or Maors, come from Mount Meru, which is considered to be the center of all physical, metaphysical, and spiritual universes. Mount Meru is in India, but which India? Definitely not the modern day India, because that India is really Hindustan. We've already learned that. So it had to be the real India, which is India Superior, which was in North America. We know this. Scholars even called the Maya ancient Indias India, because they spoke Sanskrit, which is the oldest language and origin of all the languages. We have already learned that the Maya Indians civilized the Egyptians. Additionally, the Maya Naga built Angkor Wat and Angkor Thom, the city of the god kings, as a physical reflection of Mount Meru. The Maya Naga civilized India, Egypt, Babylon, and etc. The Mayas were an Atlantean civilization from India Superior, the Americas, that was millions, if not billions of years old, and their science and technology civilized the world. I say this because it was the Maya Naga that built Angkor Wat, and this civilization had contact with dinosaurs, because you can even see them on the temple walls. How do you explain the dinosaur found at Angkor Wat Temple in Cambodia? Also, the architecture of this ancient temple is an Indian-style temple complex, which is very ancient, of course. The builders of the Angkor Wat temple were known as the Khmer, or Thoth people. Talking about Thoth again, here we go. The Khmer people were Maya Nagas, and they were Moors, or Swarthi. The word Khmer literally means builder, and it also means to create. Lord Khmer of Egyptian legend was actually the Egyptian god Thoth, or Thought. Ham is also symbolic of Hermes Trismegistus, which is also Thoth. Ham also rhymes with Cam, Sam, Ram, and I am, Abraham, Muhammad. The title Khmer is the origin of words like Sumer, Kim, Shem, Cam, Ham, Cam, and Khan. This makes sense because the civilized world, Africa, Asia, and the Americas, was once known as the Three Indies. This makes sense because the Moor and the Hebrew both dress up like the ancient Hindu of India. This makes even more sense when you realize that Sufism comes from India, in which Sufism is the origin of the Islamic religion. And when you can also consider the fact that words like Rome, the Vedic Khan, or Vatican, and Ramadan comes from Lord Rama, or Ram. The Asiatic black man, or swarthy individuals, swarthy complexion individuals, in the Americas is a Berber Indian, India, and a Mu'er, or Moor, or Ma'ur, especially when you factor in the original Khmer nationality, which is an all-inclusive nationality because the nationality of Khmer ties in virtually everyone: Egyptians, Hebrews, Moors, and Indians. The word Indian comes from the Latin Indios, which means the black people who are with God. We are not the cowboys and Indians, war bonnet wearing, plains Indian type of Indian that Hollywood and elite have created as a throw-off, but we are the ancient Maya Naga Indians, the Vedic, Aryan type of Indian, from India Superior that civilized the world. Yes, India Superior was in North America.
I'm a savior. I take the strange variables of human life and make something out of the crazy quilt that saves hundreds of lives.